internet access and a laptop or computer. Whether it's remote learning, working from home, making appointments, or getting basic necessities online, if you don't have access, you're missing out. For children and families in under-resourced communities without good internet access, that means getting left behind in their education, job opportunities, and other important aspects of life. The gulf between the digital haves and have-nots is impossible to ignore. The Brookings Institute says FCC estimates show that in 2019, more than 21 million people lack broadband access, shutting them out of many aspects of life. Some technology thought leaders now believe it's time to consider internet access a basic human necessity like air, water, and electricity. It's absolutely essential because you can't even apply for jobs in person anymore, says Cherie L. Smith, editor-in-chief of Laptop Magazine.
There needs to be strong, consistent internet to make sure that everybody can learn and work and look for work and make these new businesses. It's literally that important.
Since the pandemic closed schools, children who do not have internet access are having a very tough time. The Legal Aid Society went to court to force New York City to provide broadband for the thousands of children in homeless shelters. Education advocate Sharon Darris donated laptops to a Brooklyn high school so students could continue their education. He says every day students are losing out, especially in underserved communities, and that the full adverse effects may not be seen for years.
The further we continue to go in this environment, those kids who are most at risk will suffer the most. And so the long-term effects of it are, looking at generational poverty, kids not, having opportunities to go to college.
If you can get online, there's good news for job seekers, even in this economy, says MediaCo Vice President Patricia Robinson. Before the pandemic, in addition to her corporate duties, she gave many professional development seminars. She says now the place for those motivated to improve is online, and that the virtual workspace offers opportunities that would not have been possible in person.
I believe that this is a great time to focus on all of the free resources out there. I do know that people are fatigued with Zoom, but there are a lot of free learning resources. So this is a time where you can make yourself a little bit more marketable.
Senior citizens are falling on the wrong side of the digital divide too. Let's find out what our panel has to say. Joining me is Cherie L. Smith. She is the editor-in-chief of Laptop Magazine. Cherie, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
We really appreciate it. Also with us is Pat Robinson. She's the Vice President for Human Resources and Community Engagement at MediaCo, that's Hot 97 and WBLS. She's also an educator and a consultant. Pat, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me today. Really excited.
Thank you so much. Also with us is Sharon Darris. He's Executive Director of the Adams Street Foundation. Sharon, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Cherie, I want to ask you, did you ever foresee such a revolution in terms of our dependence on the whole digital universe as we are now?
In terms of being in a pandemic, no, but absolutely I saw things. We were already moving towards that. Like, we hold supercomputers in our hands. They're called smartphones. They're becoming as, if not more powerful than the laptops that we use. And yeah, I saw this, just not working from home for almost a year. I never foresaw that.
And Sharon, in terms of the educational piece, because that's the part we've heard about. We've seen kids in homeless shelters. Legal Aid had to sue to try to get them internet access so they wouldn't fall behind. Educators tell us if kids don't read by a certain grade level, second grade or fifth grade or whatever, they could actually be tracked, in a very negative way for the rest of their lives. How important is this digital piece to education right now?
It's mission critical, to be honest with you. This has been a long time coming. For years, the education field has talked about the importance of blended learning and the move to blended learning. And so I think people have known that it was coming, but given everything that's gone on in the pandemic, it's become apparent that, having a computer, working internet access is critical, not only to have a job, but certainly to get a great education and then go so forth and be meaningful contributor to society and a civilian. So It's more important than ever and will continue to be super important.
And we're going to talk about that and the ways that it's happening and some of the work that you're doing to help the kids as well. Pat, in terms of the job sphere, a lot of people, we lost a lot of jobs here in New York City. Many of them were service industry. People would be managers of hotels or managers of stores, managers of other or various facilities. Those jobs are gone. The economic experts say they may never return. What's your picture on where we are with this digital thing right now and what opportunities exist?
Yeah, so just understanding that we've been pushed and then nudged in a way where we all have become catalysts of innovation in a space that we are not really prepared, that encompasses a lot of things. So that encompasses just reliability on internet access. Internet access is not a luxury. That also relies on new skills and training. And what does that mean? And how do we get it? And how do we afford it? So there's a lot of opportunities out there, but there are also a lot of challenges that need to be addressed as well. I myself find myself, teaching myself on free resources even to this day. A lot of people do not have the bandwidth or don't even know where to begin to find free resources or to even tap into places that they've never been involved in. So I think it's a really important discussion.
Just how critical is internet access? We'll find out next.
Cherie, when we've spoken, you say that internet access needs to be considered a basic essential of life, like electricity, clean water, housing. Why do you say that?
Absolutely, because in the world that we're living in now, you need a strong, viable internet connection, whether it's for education, whether it's for work. It's just become vital, especially in the current circumstances that we find ourselves in. And in a lot of homes, well, especially if you're below the poverty line, a lot of those homes don't have mobile or landline internet. And it's becoming a problem if you're working remote. If you have a child that needs to attend virtual classes and you don't have the internet, that means that your child is essentially absent, or you are absent from work. You can't participate in the many Zoom and Google Meets and Skype meetings that we're all using to communicate these days. So, and it's something that's been happening in other countries. In Norway, broadband internet, high-speed broadband internet is an absolute right. And the same thing needs to go for the United States. We consider ourselves the world's biggest superpower. So if we don't have it here, what does that say about us?
Exactly. Sharon, what about that in terms of education and the access? Tell us what you're seeing and what the Adams Street Foundation, what you guys are trying to do to make things better.
Sure. So if you think about it for a second, everything that we do every day is reliant on the internet. And so when you apply it to a young person in particular, everything from applying for a job. I mean, when's the last time someone applied for a job with a piece of paper, to applying to college so that kids can create a better future for themselves? All that stuff is online. And while you might have a mobile phone, which certainly is a great device, to do all of that stuff in great detail just really isn't realistic. And so people definitely need to have computers and they need to have high-speed internet access. Related to this pandemic, we were thrown for a loop by everybody else. And so one of the things that we did pretty early on, and we just happened to have the devices ready for it, was that we took every device that we had, and we support about 500 kids throughout Brooklyn primarily. Myself and the principal of the school that we work with, we actually took about 30, 40 laptops, drove door to door around the city, and we just delivered computers to families that were in need.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
So, that's certain stuff that we've done. But I mean, the need continues to be great.
No, it's huge. Pat, you also teach at Westchester Community College. You'll get a lot in your 24 hours every single day. In terms of that, you told me that there's actually more educational opportunities for people because of the online access. Explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. But before I do, I definitely want to talk about my experience during the pandemic as an educator, because I think it's important for people to understand there's this struggle for young people to identify, is it even worth it to continue my studies at this time when the economy is down? And if I do, now I'm faced with these new challenges of remote learning, not being in the same place. And so we're charged as educators to provide this quality instruction in a synchronous environment, but making sure that we hold our students accountable, but also bridging a sense of empathy to understand that this is all new, this is challenging. And so it's a really robust kind of intensity. And for me personally, I really am responsible and take it personally to make sure that my students learn. But I do see challenges. In our syllabus, we are required to outline all of the criteria. One of the criteria that are on our syllabus, or mine in particular, is that you must turn your camera on. And then I found out that I had to kind of come back off of that, because that is really important to know that everyone is not in a position to turn their camera on. There are different situations happening at home. And so I've had to become a little bit more flexible. And for me, it was about really making sure that they showed up and how to keep them engaged during that semester. And by the grace of God, my classes have been filled to capacity, and my passing rate has been about 97%. And I embark on a new semester next week where I have another full class, and I've spent a lot of disciplined time to make sure that when I roll out this engagement, I'm taking into consideration that there's internet access issues, there's household issues, there's income issues, there's isolation issues, and then there's this pressure for these students to deliver all of these assignments and stay kind of within the zone of passing.
What do you say to people in terms of job opportunities, not necessarily as digital journalists, but in terms of the digital sphere? We see these big companies like Google and Facebook and, you know, the Silicon Alley, the Fifth Avenue version, the Manhattan version. Are there jobs like that for people who were previously working maybe service industry jobs or other jobs that they can train themselves for or get training for?
Absolutely. The good thing about Google is that they are suspending the need for college degrees. So you could potentially find yourself working at Google or a top tech company if you're just talented and you have the skill level and the work and you can prove your work. That's the great thing about it. My question is how is Google finding these qualified candidates? Because if you saw a couple of weeks ago, one of their ex-recruitment officers gave a long thread on Twitter about the struggles that she went through trying to get Google to look at applicants from HBCUs. So if they're having problems with getting college-educated people in there, how are they getting people without those credentials?
Exactly, Pat. You're one of the people that first sees candidates for various positions, and you're also a diversity and inclusion specialist. What do you look for? Is what you're looking for in a candidate, is that changing? Are those qualifications changing?
Well, I think that we're always going to look for top quality candidates that are talented. But what is changing is just understanding that the economic environment has changed, right? So companies have sustained severe blows to their bottom lines. And at this point, when there are positions that are open, we are sometimes looking for the most qualified that can really meet the results, right? So if that comes with suspending some of the criteria in terms of educational minimums and versus what it looks like on an experience level, that would be the case. But nonetheless, there are, unfortunately, it is an employer's market right now. There are so many people that are unemployed. There is an opportunity to take your time and really go through candidates, whether it be through LinkedIn, networking groups. So, you know, it's really important for people who are interviewing and looking for jobs to not be afraid of the job descriptions. Be honest with yourself and identifying the things that you know that you're strong at, and be real clear and transparent on the things that you know that you're weak at, right? And it doesn't mean that you would disqualify for the position, but there's a nice time right now where we are in this position where we're sitting down with less distractions to a degree to really focus on free courses and learning and really disciplining your time so that you can find a teachable skill. Like even with me, I've gotten better being at home with less distractions. At first, it was really tough for me because I was so used to being out
Yeah,
in the world with
absolutely.
everything going back and forth. And so I struggled for about 2 months. And then I realized that there is really power in sitting down with less distractions because you are forced to take a look at yourself. You are forced to measure yourself up against other individuals in your industry and identify those who are doing it well and possibly take some tips.
Exactly. Sharon, what's your take on that in terms of job preparedness?
So all of the challenges, particularly people of color and underserved people have seen regarding social injustice, racial bias, I mean, all of those things are increased substantially in this type of environment. And so, if we move to where, and the example was Google a second ago, where people are not going to look at college degrees and they're just going to look on, supposed skill set and experience, people by default have bias towards people that feel like them. And so, I really worry a lot about our young people who are trying to get into these career paths where they can have a greater opportunity for themselves. And the people don't necessarily look like them or have the same type of background. The barriers are actually going to be that much greater.
Pat, what recommendations do you have for people that are really trying to look? You've given us some great ideas already.
Yeah, I just would challenge the powers to be that are in charge of making decisions in regards to education to create digital learning days for adults. I think that is so important, and for us not to assume that every parent that is doing remote instruction with their children has a really good grasp on it. And so I would challenge subject matter experts who don't mind donating their time to really create a hub of digital learning days so that we can help educate people who are in need of skill set training so that they can help their students. I'll just give a quick story. My daughter had got the coronavirus earlier last year, and I was responsible for my grandson's instruction for 2 weeks. And literally, I almost went crazy because I just could not figure things out. As savvy as I was, it was a lot for me to figure out his schedule, what he had to do. He's got a brain break, never heard of it. So it was all of these things. So I understand that there's a need for further education and how to navigate in this space. So I just would love to see a hub of digital learning days for adults.
No, absolutely. Sharon, what about that? Because a lot of parents too are not as savvy. Just because you can go on social media on your phone doesn't mean you can navigate these programs.
Yeah, I think parents have really gotten a great appreciation for what teachers have to do. We've seen all the memes and jokes about that. But what I'd like to say is that, a lot of people have actually benefited over the past year, particularly if you work in a nice corporate job that pays well. People have actually done really, really well. The stock market is reflective of that. And so I think there's a real opportunity for people who have benefited to be of service to other people. And so, to Pat's point, great opportunity for people to mentor, great opportunity for people to be career coaches, to go into schools and volunteer. I'd love to see more people do that so that there's more equity in this city.
And then Sharon, in terms of the jobs, I want to come back to the jobs too, because you have a lot of involvement with that as well in technology. What do you say to somebody who's maybe, in their early 20s, doesn't have a college education, wants to get into coding, wants to get into some of these things?
Yeah, there's some great programs out there. So there's lots of options. And so, everything from something as simple as, you can probably find a YouTube video that will teach you how to do coding to there are nonprofit organizations. Exactly. There are nonprofit organizations that'll do the teaching to, if you happen to have means, you can take classes and learn that stuff. You don't have to do it formally, but those options are in place as well.
Are we is this going to be, this is kind of like a learning curve or birth pains, growing pains?
It's definitely a growing curve. It's a learning curve, but what I like about this is that we are learning how we work. And by that, I mean, before you really were tied to a location, you had to come into the office. Now people's market has expanded because now it's remote. Like you don't see job listings for New York based, or at least in my field, like people are realizing like, hey, maybe like I have someone that works in Wisconsin. I have 2 people that work in the United Kingdom. and we meet and we do our meetings and we get our work done, and we've been more productive than ever.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on the Digital Divide. If you'd like to watch it again or see our other episodes, please go to our Fox 5 NY YouTube page. Remember, use your mind, it's your best weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.